Welcome to the Brass and Woodwind Shop. When you take the keys off of a flute, you end up with a big pile of keys. Usually you do not need to take apart the keys farther than this, but sometimes if the keys are stuck and need to be cleaned up inside, or if they need to be oiled thoroughly, or if a rod is bent or damaged in any way, you may need to pull these keys off. Here are the keys for a flute, and most of the keys are just one-piece keys, like these ones. But there are three sets of keys that come apart more: the trill keys, the left-hand keys, and the right-hand keys. The way this works is the flute keys have little pins, and they're called knock pins. And if you pull those pins out, you can get the keys apart farther. On the left-hand keys, usually there are two pins, one here holding on the B-flat key, and one here holding on the B-flat lever. The B-flat lever piece usually stays in place. Usually you do not take this one off, but you take the other one off. And that allows you to get at everything you need to get at to take these apart. On the right-hand keys, there are usually 3 or 4 pins that hold that on. There's one that holds on the F-sharp key, and usually you do not want to pull off the F-sharp key. Sometimes you need to take it off to repair a bent hinge rod or something, but usually leave that one in place if you can. And then there's a pin in each one of these little tabs. Some brands of flutes only have the 2 tabs, and then the D key can slide right off without taking anything off. But on this one there are the 3 little tabs that are pinned into place that hold the keys on. On the trill keys there are usually 2 pins, one holding on the D sharp trill, and usually you keep that one on if you can, and you take the other one off, the D sharp lever. Inside of these keys there is a rod that goes through them from here to here. These 3 little tabs hold these 3 keys onto the flute, and if you take those little tabs off, these keys will come off. These little tabs are held on by a pin, and there's the top of the pin, and there is the bottom of the pin right there. This pin is tapered and it is wedged into there. This pin goes through the top of the tab, and then it goes through the rod that is inside of there, and then it comes out the other side of the tab. To remove the tab, you need to pull out the pin that is holding it together. These are the tools that I usually use for removing pins on flute keys. This is a spring replacing pliers. It is intended for replacing needle springs on woodwind instruments, but it also works well for removing the pins on flutes. This pliers is a spring punching removal pliers, and again it is intended for working on needle springs on woodwind instruments, but it also works well for removing the pins. This is a lead block, and lead is a very soft metal, so you can put those keys on there and tap the pins out without damaging the keys or the pins. The vice grips may look scary, but they work very well for pulling the pins out after you've loosened them up, and if you do it right you will not damage the instrument at all. The tack hammer works well on tapping the pins out. Then there are a few other tools that have points on them, and you can use these to tap the pins out also. There is another tool that works very well for this. It's made by Farize, but I do not own one of these. Look for a link in the description below for where you can get one of these tools. The best and easiest tool to use is the spring replacing pliers, and that one works very well if on the back side of the key there is enough of the pin sticking out the other side that you can push it out. And if there's not enough sticking out to push it out with this one, you can go to this tool, which is the second easiest one to use. And if this one still does not loosen up the pin, then you go on to the next step, which is trying to tap it out with one of these tools. If there's a little bit of the pin on the back to work with, you take the spring replacing pliers, and the end with the split end, you put that on the top of the knock pin, and you put the other end at the bottom of the knock pin, and line that up. I'm going to squeeze this in just a second. Listen for the pin coming loose. And that means that the pin is loose. So try to pull that out. If you can get it out with your fingers, then it's fine. If not, you can push it out with something else. I'm going to carefully hold on to the pin with the vice grips, and then I'm going to pull and twist, and there's the pin. It came right out. The pin has been removed off of this, so this can slide off. You twist and slide that off. Then you can pull off the D trill key, and that's what you're left with. This rod is very dry, there's no oil on it, and it's very dirty, so I'm going to clean that up and then put some oil on it and put it back together. I'm going to take a cloth and clean that up. Then I'm going to put some oil on it and take the key and put that back in there. I'm going to work this together back and forth and around several times. And that will help loosen up any more of the debris that's on there. And also, if it's starting to rust a little bit, it will help clean that up too. Clean off that stuff, and then you can re-oil it and put it back together. Now I'm going to put the keys back together. Put this back on. It's hard to see in the video, but you look into the hole and see if it lines up with the hole in the rod. It's hard to tell because this pin is so small, but it is tapered. It's smaller at this end than it is at the other end. When you put it back together, make sure that the small end goes in the top and put the pin in from the top. Use the spring removing pliers to put it back together, and put it back together the opposite of the way you took it apart. Once you put that back together, hold both ends of the keys and move it back and forth and see if it wiggles. And if it's firmly in there, then your job is done for that key. The other keys work much the same way. The only difference is that there are more of them on the right-hand keys. Take the pliers and line it up and squeeze it together. And we'll see if that one comes up by hand. It does not. So I will pull it out with the vice grips. Just twist and pull. And there it is. You want to keep these pins in order so that they go in the same hole that they came out of. So the way I do that is I take my assembly board and I put the one at the top, the first one at the top, and then the second one down there, and then the third one a little farther down. That way when I put it back together, I'll just put them together in the opposite order. Now this little tab and the key will come off. There is the little tab, and there's the key. Then you can go down to the next tab and pull the next pin. Now I'm going to pull out that key and tab, and there they are. And one more to go. These are all the parts of the right-hand keys. And the left-hand keys are similar, but you just need to pull out one pin to get this key off. So far in this video, the knock pins have come out quite easily, but to show you what happens when they do not come out quite as easily, I'm going to pull this part of the trill key off. Usually when you're pulling apart the trill keys, you pull off this part, but in this case I'm going to pull off this part. And occasionally you will need to pull off this one if this one gets stuck to the point where you cannot get it off without damaging the instrument. Sometimes you'll need to pull off the other one, or if the rod inside is damaged, sometimes you may need to pull these ones off too. I squeezed it. It did come apart a little bit, but I don't think it came off enough to pull the pin out. And there's not enough of the pin to hold on to with the vice grips, so I'm going to have to use the next tool to get that out. Next I'm going to use the spring punching removing pliers. This has a tapered screw on it, and sometimes that pushes the pin out just a little bit farther from the bottom. This pliers you have to line up the same way, but since it comes to a point, you have to be more careful to line it up right over the pin. And once it's lined up, I'm going to squeeze this. I push the pin out just a little bit farther, and I'll see if that's enough to get it out or not. See if it will grab onto that pin and pull it out. Sometimes it does and sometimes it does not. And this one does not seem to be working, so I'll have to use one of my other tools to push that out from the back. I have my lead block here, and it is very soft, and it will easily conform to the metal on the flute. So I'm going to put that on there, and I'm going to take my tool. It has a sharp point on it, and I'm going to put that in the hole where the pin is. Then I'm going to take my tack hammer and tap on the top of this tool, and hopefully it will push the pin out. I'm going to give it one swift tap, and then I'll check to see if that worked or not. And I believe it did pull it out a little farther, and it might be far enough to get at it with the vice grip. The vice grip still did not work, so I'm going to try tapping it again. It looks like the pin is out far enough this time, so I'll try the vice grips again. And twist and pull, and there it is. I hope this video has been helpful. Please subscribe for more band instrument repair videos, and also look in the description below for links to where you can get some of these tools that were in the video.